Hello everyone, and welcome to Dutch Greybeard. The original impetus for making this video was my reading experience of the first Law Trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. While working on the script of this video, I came across a very interesting video on one of my favorite channels, Gronsky Books. In this video, Eric Gronsky takes 1.5 hours to review Jerusalem, the magnum opus by Alan Moore, while explaining his own intricate and elaborate rating system. I highly recommend everyone to take the time to watch this video. Link is in the description. Even though his effort in rating a book is commendable, to say the least, Eric makes a case for the uselessness or meaninglessness of rating a book. And I fully agree with him. Every rating system, no matter how detailed and extensive, inevitably misses elements one has experienced while reading the book. Moments when a sentence really awakens an insight or strikes one's emotional inner strings in a way that cannot possibly be explained without including one's entire life experience. The only review that justifies one reading experience would be to hand over the book and say, "Read it through my eyes," which obviously is not possible. So, however huge and groundbreaking one's rating system is, and Eric Gronsky's is probably the most meticulous and elaborate one I have ever come across, it is by definition always less than perfect. Now, I am most certainly not trying to develop a rating system that can come anywhere near a perfect review. The subjectivity of the reader and the literally millions of minuscule and larger elements that play a part in how one experiences reading a book makes that a futile attempt from the start. Perhaps this is why my ratings on a scale from 1 to 100 are based on gut feeling. It's not based on any system whatsoever. What I am trying to do is share my thoughts with you on this subject. During my rating process, I always try to take as many details into account as possible regarding the story, the prose, the world building, the characters, and so on. While my brain is trying to come up with a mathematical output for what is mostly an emotional rundown, these details are specified nowhere. Yet they somehow summarize my enjoyment of a book. Usually I form my rating in the blink of an eye after finishing the final page of a book. Sometimes it takes me a couple of days to gather my thoughts or feelings before I can put a number to it. Also, I may change the initial rating sometime after I've returned the book to its slumber on my shelves. I mentioned enjoyment of a book. In his video, Eric says somewhere that he was probably more impressed by the book than he was enjoying it. I find that a useful distinction. A book that greatly impressed me, for instance, is The Divine Comedy by Dante. But I have to admit that I didn't enjoy it very much, at least not all of the pages. The same thing goes for a couple of non-fiction books. And again, enjoyment or being impressed by are such subjective measurements. Looking back on my history as a reader, there were times when I rated books solely on their impressiveness. As long as they were literature and highly regarded and difficult to read, they had to be good books. Thankfully, my reading standards have relaxed a bit over the years, where enjoyment became more important. But even that is a subjective term. One can enjoy incomprehensible or experimental books. I'm thinking of Finnegan's Wake by Joyce, a book I've never read, but it's notorious for its incomprehensibility. Or one can enjoy trashy, pulpy, and easy books. To me, both ends of this spectrum and everything in between is okay. Why shouldn't it be? Some time ago, I added the so-called pick-up ability of a book. This gut feeling measurement tells me how eager I was to continue my reading. My eagerness to pick up the book can change during my reading of it. Normally, at least in most fantasy books, the pickup ability improves after a while. The beginning in a strange world with new characters can sometimes be demanding. The pickup ability is a separate measurement, which is incorporated into my overall rating, or so I choose to believe. To me, it is worth mentioning separately because of its importance. However, it's not indicative of my enjoyment of the book. All three books in the first Law series had a high pickup ability of around 80 to 85%. I was eager to keep on reading them. This percentage is not to be confused with my overall reading experience rating in the end. I remember reading the 6 Millie Molly Mandy books last year. Cozy children's books with huge font size, illustrations, and all of them shorter than 200 pages. Pickup ability of those books was around 95%, but in the end, I rated each of them with a meager 60 points out of 100. On the other hand, my first 100 points out of 100 book in a long time had a much lower pickup ability. The first 150 pages of A Song for Arbonne by Guy Gavriel Kay had a rather low pickup ability of 70%, while the rest of the book had a higher pickup ability of around 80%. Reading the first Law Trilogy by Joe Abercrombie got me thinking about another element that can influence my overall rating, namely anticipation. Every book holds a certain level of anticipation, always. Even when we know nothing of a book, simply the title, the author's name, its cover, its font size inside, or the feel of the paper can give us an impression that feeds our expectations. These impressions grow in importance as they become bigger, like with blurbs or a summary of the story or reviews. This can work both ways. When I started reading The Toll, the third book in Neal Shusterman's Arc of a Scythe trilogy, I got in with negative anticipation. This was mainly because one booktuber I regard highly had an outspoken dislike of this book. The surprise that I very much enjoyed The Toll, I thought it was the best in the trilogy, was a very pleasant one. No doubt, this pleasant surprise elevated my overall reading experience. In his rating system, Eric gives points to delivery on promises, which is a subcategory under narrative. To him, a broken promise is not just unsatisfying, but it is also infuriating. This, of course, refers to promises made within the narration of a book. I believe this also applies to anticipation, which is another kind of promise. In this case, it's a promise that I myself concocted on the basis of all the praise for Abercrombie's first trilogy on BookTube. Seeing all the rave and admiration, I created the promise that these books surely would end up scoring high 90s. The positive anticipation definitely influenced my reading experience in a negative way. It is impossible to find out how my reading experience for First Law would have been without the extremely positive anticipation. But I'm sure that not liking the books nearly half as much as I had anticipated influenced my overall rating. The average score for the series as a whole was 76 points, which is barely within the 4-star range. And even though I really enjoyed reading them, the feeling of disappointment prevailed. I was unpleasantly surprised. It is hard to say when anticipation actually influences a reading experience or to what degree. Still, I want to try to put a number to it by comparing my anticipated rating to the actual one. As mentioned, I expected to be reading 90 plus books, say 92 or 93, 94 points out of 100 on average. That is 16 to 18 points higher than the actual score I gave the series. Would it be fair to say that my anticipation influenced my reading experience by, say, 17%? Or is it merely an underperformance by 17 points on whatever scale? Let's forget about the math behind all this. Fact is and remains that my expectations were not met, which indeed was unsatisfying and a little bit annoying. Even though I enjoyed reading The Blade itself, Before They Are Hanged and Last Argument of Kings, they left me feeling like the lawyer in the movie Philadelphia, played by Denzel Washington.
Your Honor, 5 months ago, this witness characterized Andrew Beckett as caviar. Now he's calling him a bologna sandwich.
After reading the books, the expected caviar turned out to be a bologna sandwich. Love to hear your thoughts on this subject. Do you give a rating to the books you read? And if so, what elements are important for you in doing that? Has positive anticipation ever ruined a book for you? Or has negative anticipation saved a book for you? Thank you very much for watching this video. Until we meet again at Dutch Greybeard.